Hey everybody, in this video, we're going to talk about the 3 top takeaways from the Pruning Shears of Revision by Neville Goddard. Now, this is one of his small books that he wrote, and it's only relatively about 5 or 6 pages, so it's not really a book, more of a little manuscript that he wrote. But this is one of my favorite small books by Neville Goddard that I either read or listen to all the time. This is one of my personal favorites, my personal best by he has a lot of great material, but this is one of my favorites. But anyway, before we get started and diving into this, is that one, in the description I'm going to post the Pruning Shears Revision PDF, so you can check that out if you want to read it. Then also I'm going to post here the video link to the audio version of the Pruning Shears of Revision, and that's narrated by myself, if you can stand my sexy voice or not. I am not a professional narrator, but that given that I will read it out loud, read it, that way you can hear it and listen to it while you're driving or working out or doing whatever, just because it really helps out in personal development. Sometimes even for myself, I'm in a mood to either read stuff, and sometimes I'm in a mood just to put headphones on and listen. So both will be at your avail. Up here is the link to the video, and down in the description is the link to get the free PDF if you want to read it and actually know what I'm talking about. So lo and behold, let's get started. Now, what is the Pruning Shears of Revision? And I'm going to share with you the 3 top takeaways so you know the gist of what it's about. So I'm going to read to you a couple of quotes, and we're going to dive into it. I got my handy dandy notebook here to keep me on point and task, because that way I can remember. I know I have a brain fart once in a while. But this is what Neville Goddard says. The daily use of the Pruning Shears of Revision. There is no reason not to get what you want. Listen to this. I'll repeat it one more time. The daily use of the Pruning Shears of Revision. There is no reason not to get what you want. This is magic. There's magic in the Pruning Shears of Revision. Now, taking that, what exactly is the Pruning Shears of Revision? Okay, now this is step 1. Okay, what is the Pruning Shears of Revision? Now, the Pruning Shears of Revision, he kind of goes off on kind of explaining the mind as like a garden, and we want the garden beautiful. We have to tend to the garden. We have to take shears. That's why it's called the Pruning Shears of Revision. We take shears or scissors and we tend the garden. We chop down the weeds. We chop down the tall grass and make the garden beautiful. That's how he's picturing our mind. Okay, we want our mind basically thinking all good thoughts, good things, good ideas. Okay, when we start thinking negative about ourselves or situations, or negative of other people, that's when weeds will grow. That's when our garden being the mind, we'll start growing roots, we'll start growing weeds, the grass will get taller. Then we have to go in and basically cut the grass, tend to our garden, make our garden beautiful. Okay, so what it means by the Pruning Shears of Revision, it goes straight into, and the best time to do this is giving you a little bit of homework. The best time to do this is at nighttime before you go to bed. So the Pruning Shears of Revision means this, is before you go to bed, you sit back, you kind of visualize the day that you had. Okay, you kind of replay your whole day, the good, the bad. You don't judge it, okay? And you take the parts that you don't like in the day that happened. Maybe you got in arguments, at work, arguments with your significant other. You had things happen throughout the day that you didn't really like, or maybe the day didn't really go as planned at all, okay? You sit back, you play that in your mind, and then you replay it in your imagination, okay? Then you imagine the day, you imagine your perfect day for that day. So you replay everything as perfectly. Does that make sense? So let me give you an example. Let's say you take something basic, you got in an argument. So when you replay that day, you still have that conversation with that person, but you don't argue with them. Make sense? So you replay your perfect day. So there's nothing negative in that day. So that's what he means by pruning shears of revision. You're replaying that day. Okay, you're rewriting that day how you wanted that day to go at the end of the day. And when you sit back, lay back, you maybe your eyes are closed and you're imagining your perfect day on that day. And that's what he means by the pruning shears of revision. You don't want your mind to be cluttered with negative things that happen that day. Okay, when we have stuff happen, okay, I'm saying okay a lot, I apologize. But when we have things happen and we really get in a bad habit, and it's easy to fall in a bad habit of discussing the negative, okay, focusing on the negative, focusing on anything negative that happened that day. We sit back at night, maybe before you watch TV or whatnot, where you think, oh, I had a crappy day. And you just replay the negative in your mind. Okay. But it's okay to sit back. Okay. We're kind of doing step one, but we're not really doing the whole pruning shears of revision. We're kind of, mentally going through our mind like, oh my God, today was crappy, but we're not revising it. Okay, we need to revise the day as the day we wanted it to happen, and we revise it exactly how we wanted it to happen, minus out all the negative and minus out all the arguments and so forth and so forth. So we're revising it as our perfect day. Then hopefully that we kind of drift off into sleep. And we do this every single day. So we're revising our day as perfect as we want it to be in real life. Okay. Now that's the pruning shears of revision. That's exactly what we're doing. We're taking our day at nighttime. We're sitting back, we're going through our day, we're not judging it, we're just going through it. Anything that we don't like about our day, we revise it. We revise it to the perfect day that we wanted to have, how we wanted to go. And we do this night after night, and we get into a routine of this, and we do this. This is kind of a bedtime routine. That's what the pruning shears revision is all about. Now, this is the takeaway one, so you kind of know what it's about. Now, takeaway two is he basically, Neville Goddard basically takes it up a notch. He takes it up a notch in spirituality. Okay, so he kind of adds to it. And I have a couple of quotes here that kind of add to it, because step two is, or takeaway two is, continuous forgiveness of sin. Now, remember, when Neville Goddard talks about sin, or sin in the Bible, or sin in any type of spiritual text, sin is basically the separation of God. Okay, but then if you take it a little bit deeper, if heaven is within you, God is within you, okay, sin separates you from the abundance of your birthright. So abundance is given to you. Abundance is your birthright in almost all spiritual texts, not just the Bible. Okay. So takeaway two is continuous forgiveness of sin. But what does he mean by this? Okay. And this is where it goes up, it really goes up to higher consciousness. As he says, freedom and forgiveness is linked. Okay. I'll repeat that. Freedom and forgiveness is linked. You cannot be free if you cannot forgive. Listen to this. You cannot be free. If you think you're free and you don't forgive, you're not really free, my friend. Okay. Unforgiveness binds you to that sin. I'll say this one more time. Unforgiveness binds you to that sin. So this is why a lot of spiritual texts, okay, and no matter if I quote the Bible, when you study religions and you study a lot of spiritual texts, they agree on a lot of things, and they agree on this. Unforgiveness binds you to that sin. That's why we don't forgive somebody. That's why in spiritual texts or the Bible, they really talk about a lot of forgiveness. That's why they talk about forgiveness. Maybe it's not explained very well to us that the reason why you want to forgive or forgive that person because it binds you, it links you to them, it links you to their sin. Okay, we think we're free from it, but we're really not. When it binds you, you really attract on that level. Okay, because we're judging them. Okay, we haven't really truly forgave, so it links us to them. It links us to that sin. Makes sense? So, that this is why I kind of love listening to or love reading the Pruning Shears of Revision, because it really goes up, Neville Goddard really takes it up a few notches in spirituality and just higher consciousness. He gets away with, lots of times with when we talk about the law of attraction, the law of assumption, lots of times we only focus on ourselves, what we want. Okay, it's all about me, it's all about Chad, it's all about what I want. But the Pruning Shears of Revision, it starts off, the basics of what is the Pruning Shears of Revision, me revising my day, revising the perfect day, and having a routine of that. But then step 2 is, it's not just me. Makes sense? It's about other people. Okay. So this is why he kind of goes off on continuous forgiveness of sin. And I'll repeat this, but I think this is very powerful, is freedom and forgiveness is linked. If you want to be totally free, you have to forgive, because freedom and forgiveness is linked. Okay, you cannot be free if you cannot forgive, period. Unforgiveness binds you to that sin. Unforgiveness binds you to that person. Okay, so now we're attracting on that level. Makes sense? So this is why I love this. I'm going to just search really quick and make sure there's not one. There is one more on forgiveness that I wrote down that I really liked to bring it up. Is complete forgiveness equals the only art of living is complete forgiveness. Okay, I'll repeat that. The only art of living is complete forgiveness and putting something in its place. And I'll talk about this in a second. I'll repeat it one more time. The only art of living is complete forgiveness. Okay. Now I'm going to go on to step 3. Okay, but takeaway 3 kind of combines with takeaway number 2. Okay, number 2 is having continuous forgiveness of sin of other people. Okay, because remember, okay, sin, to be completely free, equals to forgive. Okay, if you cannot forgive, it links you and binds you to that sin. Okay, now 3 is pruning others' circumstances. Now, this is where he also takes it up another notch in spirituality, into higher consciousness. Is that, remember what I said, is it's not just about us. Okay, lots of times the basics to the law of attraction, the basics to the law of assumption, is it only talks about us, what we want. Okay, but our real responsibility of humans, or a spiritual or a soul, our real responsibility is helping other people. But how do we do this? By the pruning shears of revision. So when we go back to step 1, what is the pruning shears of revision? Okay, the pruning shears of revision is revising our day. Okay, we sit down at night, we think of the day we had. It could be mixture with good and bad. Okay, and you revise that day. You take out the bad and you put something in its place. You don't just remove it like it never happened, but we put something in its place. Okay, so we revise our day exactly how we wanted our day to go in our imagination, and we do this day in and day out. Okay, now what does it mean to pruning shears of revision, but pruning others? Okay, this is our responsibility, and I'll give you an example. I think an example does it the best. An example is, maybe, and this is one of the examples Neville Goddard always uses. Maybe you run across a friend, or maybe an acquaintance that he's unemployed. He's out of a job. Okay. When you do the pruning shears of revision on other people, I would do the same thing. I would revise the day, revise our conversation, and besides seeing my friend as unemployed, I see him in my imagination, in my mind, as employed, as he has a job. He has a wonderful job. He just got promoted at work. He makes a great salary. Next time I see him, I'm going to congratulate him on his new job. I don't see him as unemployed. Okay, that's how you use the pruning shears of revision on others. You don't see them. Now, Neville Goddard uses the word sin, but you don't see them in their current circumstances that they're in. You see them out of their circumstances the way you want to see them. Okay, that's why he gives, if someone's unemployed, you don't see them as unemployed. You see them as employed with a great job. Okay, I'll take it a step further. Maybe you have a alcoholic, okay, in the family. Okay, but what do we do? And what do we do as a bad habit as a family when we have an alcoholic in the family? Someone struggles with alcohol. Usually we get around the dinner table, or when we get together, a big family get together, and we talk about this one person who has an alcohol problem. But we look at him as an alcoholic. See, that's the issue here. Okay, because how we look at people, we can actually keep people. Okay, the power that we have, we can actually keep people, okay, in that state. Okay, but by using the pruning shears of revision, okay, you wouldn't see them, or I wouldn't see them as an alcoholic. Okay, they might be in their current circumstance, but I don't look at current circumstance. I revise it, and I see him well and healthy and don't struggle with alcohol. Okay, that's how I see him in my imagination. Okay, so that's the power that we have. So really, with all the three takeaways from the pruning shears of revision are this, is I'll go through them really quick. Number one was we prune our own day. Okay, we sit back, we visualize that our current day, the day that we had, we don't judge it, the likes and dislikes and everything else, and we revise it. We revise it as a perfect day that we wanted to have, and we do this night after night after night. And this is what Neville Goddard means when he says pruning shears of revision. He's talking about the mind like a garden. Okay, when we get out of habit, we get out of practice, we let weeds grow all over in our garden. If you ever had a garden, in your life or outside, or you have to mow your grass or whatever, you have a little flower garden. You kind of have experience with that. You have to keep the weeds at bay. You have to pull the weeds, trim the weeds, because as the weeds grow higher and higher, they get bigger and bigger, the roots get deeper and deeper, and the weeds will actually eat all the food and the nutrients from your flowers or from your vegetables or tomatoes, or if you have a vegetable garden. That's why you have to keep your garden trimmed. You have to keep all the weeds under bay, or it will kill or eventually kill your garden, because it will take all the nutrients from your flowers or take all the nutrients from your vegetables. So it's the same way with our mind, okay, is that, for us to do it nightly and daily, using the pruning shears of revision and revising our perfect day that we want to have, and imagine through our imagination, imagine a day that we wanted, and we do this every single night. Step two, he talks about continuous forgiveness of sin. Okay, remember, we can't be free if we don't forgive. Okay, unforgiveness links us to that sin. Unforgiveness links us to that person. Okay, so if it links us, we're going to attract on that level. Okay, that's why sometimes you feel like law of attraction don't work, because there's a lot of unforgiveness. So you're linked to that person. So true freedom, to be truly free, is complete forgiveness of sin. Remember that. And this can be a tough, this is also a very higher consciousness. This can be a tough one to kind of swallow. Chad, I have to forgive everybody. You know what I mean? I have to forgive people who hurt me, forgive people taking advantage of me, and so forth and so forth. Yes, because if you don't forgive and you still judge, you're binded to that. You're bound to that. You're linked to that. Okay, to basically cut that rope, break that bond, break that binding, is to completely and freely forgive. Okay, and this is the tough one for me. It's not always easy for me either. Okay, now the third one is taking the both to the pruning shears of revision and completely forgiving. And then he goes on to step 3. And step 3 is you're not just focused on yourself. Okay, you're not just focused on, pruning your own life. You're pruning a life of others. And this is when he starts talking about giving examples of you run into somebody that's unemployed, but you don't see them as unemployed. In your imagination, you see them as employed. Okay, someone's an alcoholic in your family, but you don't see them as an alcoholic. Okay, you see them as healthy and don't struggle with alcohol. That's how you see them in your mind and your imagination. Okay, so you're using the power for other people. You're not only using the power for yourself. Okay, remember with the law of attraction, okay, that the laws of the subconscious mind, it could be made for good and it could be made for bad. It could be made to help people and could be made to harm people. Okay, this is the power that we have as a spiritual being. So we're using it as good. Now, going on a little bit farther on this is when he really starts talking about objective versus subjective, or objective versus subjective law of attraction, meaning all objective and subjective means that you're focused on yourself, you focus on your own wants, and subjective means everything is related, everything connects. Okay, we're connected to other people. We're connected to people that we run into on a day-to-day basis. We're connected to, it doesn't even have to be a friend, an acquaintance. I could go grocery shopping and, run into somebody and we're just a normal conversation that's really quick because we don't know each other. And I might say, hey, how's your day? And the person says, oh, it sucks, I got fired today. Okay, but when we walk away from that conversation, if I use the pruning shears of revision, when I walk away, I immediately revise that conversation I had with that stranger. I revise it. I don't see him as being terminated. I see him having a great job. I see him as being employed. And that's how I walk away. Okay, and I walk away from it. I'll let go from it, let go of the how, don't think about it again. But that is a higher consciousness. So that's what I'm doing. I'm using the law of attraction for myself, and I'm using the law of attraction for other people. Okay, so I'm using the imagination techniques as far as the pruning shears of revision. I'm using them for myself and I'm using them for other people. Okay, my friends. So hopefully this helps. Sometimes when you listen to the Pruning Shears of Revision, or sometimes when you listen to just Neville Goddard, sometimes it takes you a little bit if you're kind of new to him. If you're listening to his live recordings, sometimes he talks very in kind of old English because a lot of his stuff are from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and I think in the very early 70s. He passed away sometimes in his 70s. Or sometimes in the 1970s, I want to say. So he's been around for a long time, but he talks in old English, and sometimes he scatters. Some of his stuff is very concise, on point, and it has a nice flow. Sometimes he jumps around. Sometimes it's like the Pruning Shears of Revision. Sometimes he's talking about stuff in the beginning, then right in the middle, he really explained what it's about. Then he gives another example. So he's kind of tying everything together. But when I first started listening to him, it took me a little bit while to kind of get used to it. But a lot of his lectures and recordings are very terrific. He really kind of blends the spirituality side to the law of assumption, the law of attraction, the higher consciousness, the subconscious mind. So he really blends the two together because remember, everything is linked. Okay, that's why he talks about subjective reality, subjective law of attraction, because everything is linked together. Okay, you and I are linked. We ran into each other somewhere. You and I are linked together somehow. okay? And that's the power that we have. And we want to use our power for good. We don't want to use our power just objectively, okay, meaning just for ourselves. We want to use the power for other people. And that's why he explains the pruning shears of revision like he did. We use it to prune our own life, prune our own circumstances, revise our own circumstances, okay, kind of rewrite how we wanted our day to go at nighttime. But then we do that for other people that we run into during the day. We do that to family, we do that too. It could be family, friends, and other acquaintances or strangers that we run into during the day. We do that for them as well. That's the responsibility that we have as a spiritual being. Okay, we just don't use good for our own life. We do good for other people as well. And hopefully you enjoyed all that, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.